Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable silence can feel? Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that appears unexpectedly. When a conversation pauses, when a room grows quiet, when there is nothing left to say. In those moments, many of us rush to fill the space. We reach for words, for sounds, for distractions. A notification, a song, a video playing in the background. Almost as if silence itself is something we need to escape. But what if silence is not empty at all? What if silence is not something to avoid, but something to understand? Because beneath the surface of silence, there is a quiet kind of power. A power that many people overlook, simply because it does not shout. We live in a world filled with noise. Not just physical noise, but mental noise. Thoughts competing for attention, opinions coming from every direction, constant movement, constant input, constant stimulation. From the moment we wake up to the moment we close our eyes, there is always something asking for our attention. And over time, this noise becomes normal. So normal, in fact, that silence begins to feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. But silence has a way of revealing things. That noise hides. Think about the last time you were truly alone, with no music playing, no phone in your hand, no conversation to follow, just you and quiet. At first, it might have felt strange, maybe even restless. Your mind may have started replaying thoughts, old conversations, worries about the future, questions you haven't answered yet. But if you stayed in that silence long enough, something subtle may have happened. Your thoughts began to slow, your breathing softened, and beneath the noise of everyday thinking, something clearer began to appear. Silence creates space, and space is where understanding begins. It's easy to believe that answers come from speaking, from explaining, from reacting quickly. But many of life's most meaningful realizations arrive quietly, not in loud conversations, but in still moments. Think about how clarity often comes, not in the middle of chaos, but after it. After the argument ends, after the day is over, after the noise fades. In the silence that follows, understanding begins to take shape. It's like watching muddy water settle. When the water is stirred, everything becomes cloudy. But when it is left alone, when there is stillness, the particles slowly fall to the bottom, and suddenly, the water becomes clear. Your mind works the same way. When life is loud and rushed, your thoughts can feel scattered, uncertain, overwhelming, hard to understand. But silence allows things to settle, not instantly, not dramatically, but gradually. And in that gradual stillness, clarity begins to form. Silence is also powerful because it teaches us to listen, not just to others, but to ourselves. So much of our time is spent reacting, replying quickly, thinking about what to say next, trying to keep conversation moving, but listening. True listening requires silence. It requires patience. It requires the willingness to pause instead of respond. Have you ever spoken to someone who truly listened to you, not someone who interrupted? not someone who rushed to give advice, but someone who allowed silence to exist between your words, someone who didn't fill every gap with their own thoughts. In those moments, you feel heard, understood, valued, because silence creates room for connection, not shallow connection, but meaningful connection. Sometimes the most powerful response is not words at all, but presence, stillness, attention. Silence also gives us something that is becoming rare. Time to notice. When everything is loud and fast, we overlook small things. The sound of wind through trees, the rhythm of your own breathing, the way sunlight changes throughout the day. These details exist all the time, but noise makes them invisible. Silence brings them back. It slows your awareness. It reminds you that life is not only happening in big dramatic moments, but in quiet ones too. There is something deeply grounding about sitting in silence and simply observing, not fixing, not reacting, not planning, just noticing the rise and fall of your breath, the feeling of being present in a single moment. Silence allows you to meet yourself without distraction, and sometimes that is exactly what we need, because without silence, it's easy to lose touch with what we truly feel. We move from one task to another, from one thought to the next, from one distraction to another, and slowly, we forget to check in with ourselves. We forget to ask simple questions. How do I feel right now? What do I truly need? What am I avoiding? Silence creates room for honest answers. Not always comfortable ones, but honest ones. And honesty is the beginning of growth. Silence is also powerful because it builds strength, not physical strength, but inner strength. The kind that comes from being able to sit with your thoughts without running away from them. It's easy to distract yourself when emotions feel heavy, to scroll endlessly, to turn on noise, to fill every moment with sound. But when you allow silence, you face yourself, not with judgment, but with awareness. And over time, this awareness becomes resilience. You become less afraid of quiet moments, less dependent on noise, to feel comfortable, more connected to your own presence. There is also wisdom in knowing when not to speak. Words can be powerful, but silence can be even more powerful. In difficult conversations, silence allows understanding. In moments of anger, silence prevents regret. In moments of uncertainty, silence gives space for thought. Not every situation requires an immediate response. Not every silence needs to be filled. Sometimes, pausing is the wisest choice because silence creates distance between reaction and action, and in that distance, there is choice. Choice to respond thoughtfully instead of impulsively. Choice to listen instead of assume. Choice to understand instead of react. Silence is not weakness. It is not emptiness. It is not absence. Silence is presence. Without noise, it is awareness. Without distraction, it is strength. Without force. And perhaps one of the greatest gifts of silence is peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from perfect circumstances, but the kind that comes from inner stillness, the ability to sit quietly and feel calm, even when life feels uncertain. This kind of peace cannot be forced. It grows slowly in small moments of intentional quiet, a few minutes without distraction, a walk without headphones, a pause before speaking, a breath before reacting. These simple moments may seem small, but over time, they shape the way you experience life. They soften your thoughts. They steady your emotion. They deepen your awareness, and little by little, silence becomes less uncomfortable and more comforting, more familiar, more meaningful. So maybe today, you don't need more noise. Maybe you don't need more input. Maybe what you need is a moment of quiet, a pause between tasks, a breath between thoughts, a space where nothing is demanded and nothing is expected. Just stillness, just presence, just silence. Because silence is not empty. It is full of answers waiting to be heard, full of clarity waiting to appear, full of peace waiting to be noticed. And if you allow yourself to sit with silence, even for a few moments each day, you may begin to discover its quiet power, not loud, not dramatic, but steady, gentle, transformative. And perhaps over time, you will come to see that silence is not something to escape, but something to return to again and again, like a calm place within yourself. Always there, always waiting, always powerful,